Well, sometimes I have to be the judge and jury. And actually, you know what? I'll be the judge. You, the audience, be the jury. You let me know who wins this debate. Let me set up the case. Again, I am not a part of this. I'm just a judge. I will call timeouts. I will ask questions because I want you, the jury, to answer the following question. Here's the case. Dion, the lazy landlord, finally had a tenant do him dirty. And left him with a $9,000 remodel. As any landlord with any experience would say, welcome to the club. Matthew is here to say that, yes, that $9,000 is real money. It is a real concern. But Dion is telling us and is adamant it is not going to cost him a penny. Folks, Dion, I think we owe it to you to open the case, given that Matt has bought this case against you. Why don't you have the opening remarks? Tell us when $9,000 isn't $9,000.
So, first of all, thanks for getting me and Matt laughing so much we're crying and then pushing record and saying, let's have a serious debate. Because it is a serious debate. And what I want to do is, with transparency, say I have absolute respect for Michael Zuber and Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and all of the investors that I know that I say make this same mistake. And when I say that you're making this mistake, I don't care about you guys, right? Your portfolio is at least 10 times mine, the size, at least 10 times the cash flow. I'd say 10 times the success, right? So I'm not saying it's hurt you guys in any way. I'm saying as a teacher, it's very hard to remember what it's like to not know something. And since your portfolio is of a size where this doesn't matter, you don't think this way. So when you say this in a video, it could be hurting a brand new investor. And that was my goal of why I'm saying the argument that I hear often, and I actually heard, I think, I forget who it was, Cody Sanchez or somebody recently say, if you make $100 a month and your water heater goes out and it costs $1,000 to replace, you lost 10 months worth of cash flow. Right? See, so you guys nod your head. That's how the investors, we've heard it in videos several times. We've heard people say stuff like that often, right? Okay. So I'm going to let Matt explain how it's going to cost me money. And then I'm going to ask you a question, Zuber. Okay. So Matt, how is this going to cost me $9,000? First of all, that's a very good estimate. Like based on what I saw in the video,
I know. I
think if I did some work myself, I can get it done for 5. So a new investor can have a tenant turnover, just do a bunch of sweat equity. I'm not doing that.
Nope.
It's going to cost me at least $9,000. But go ahead. How's this costing me $9,000?
Well, I mean, then I have to blow. So I have to blow up your argument. So here's the thing. So Zub, let me explain. If it pleases the court, it pleases the court. Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Dion and all of us set aside money every single month to go into our maintenance fund, right?
For sure.
Because we've all been in that case where a heating system goes, a roof goes, siding has to be repaired, a sewer line blows up, a driveway has to be done, something has to be rebuilt, fill in the blank, but it's usually this massive expense. Now, some people, maybe the Cody Sanchez of the world, look at it and go, well, yeah, it's $100 a month, or I make $100 a month. And so it's $1,000. I lose 10 months. There is that component to it, but I would put before you, what I would submit to you is that, yes, you are taking this money on a monthly basis as part of the maintenance fee, right? The maintenance set aside, which is to do these big types of projects. Now, the issue or the contention that I have with Dion's approach is that he said it's not costing me $9,000 to do unit. It's costing the old tenant $9,000 because they funded that $100 a month into the account. What I would submit to you is that is human origami that you have to twist yourself into to come to that conclusion based on the fact that if I didn't have to do that $9,000 worth of work, I still have $9,000. And so that $9,000 that I now don't have to spend on the unit, not only do I not have to spend it on the unit, but I also get to keep it in those reserves for when the roof does go, when the heating system goes, etc. That is for maintenance to the property, not for a tenant being an asshole and leaving this horrible, awful mess. It's $9,000 all day long. Dion did a phenomenal job of submitting his child to having to walk through the unit with him with P100 masks. And Tyvek suits would be overdoing it. I don't care what it smelled like. You're a Marine and you're a cop. You don't need a Tyvek suit. You're a tough guy. You can do this.
I have to throw away the clothes I was wearing. So
that's not surprising.
Wow.
It was Mike,
bad,
it was disgusting. It was definitely what I saw in that unit was a top 5 worst for if it were one of my units. That was a top 5 worst. It was really bad. You could tell all the carpet's ruined and like it's going to be $9,000. And that's even if you put some sweat equity in, it's going to be 9 G's.
So now go ahead.
So in summation, I believe that just because the tenant paid that amount, or that's where you allocated it and set it aside to, doesn't mean that it's not still costing you $9,000. Because if I don't have to do that work, I still have $9,000 that's going to go towards some other massive investment that I need to do in the house, roof, windows, whatever, kitchens, whatever, fill in the blank. So that's where I believe that as much as I love you and respect you, that's human origami.
Okay. So my one question for you, Zuber, before I give my counter argument. Michael Zuber, can you please calculate the yield on a rental property for me? How would you do it?
How would I do it? Oh,
how would you do it?
So there's 2 numbers. There's the expected yearly cash flow on top. It's called the numerator, and the denominator is out-of-pocket cash to secure the unit, down payment, closing cost, and make ready. That equals a percentage.
Okay, so you get your rent, then you have expenses.
Correct.
Is it your rent minus your mortgage gives you a profit?
Yeah, so it's rent minus all expenses plus reserves for bad debt or evictions and capital, all of that. So there's a reserve column. Folks, if you don't have a reserve column, you're a moron. Just say that. So yes,
right.
I have a reserve column.
Yeah,
that's right.
So when I first started investing, I thought my mortgage is $1,088. If I rent it out for $1,000 a month, I'm only losing $88. Right. I was losing way more because I wasn't setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. I've admitted to that many times. I've heard Matt say in several of his live streams, my portfolio is large enough when I'm running the calculations for yield, I don't have to set aside money anymore. I've heard you say that because your portfolio is big enough. Your repairs run through cash flow. Like, I get it. But when we're a new investor who I'm talking to, here's the math on this. And there's 2 steps to the process. The first step is rent was $1,500 after the binder strategy, and it's gone up since then. So $1,500 is the rent. I set aside 15% for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. So tenant was there 5 years that I owned.
Is that $175? Am I doing that right?
$225.
Oh, $225. Okay.
Yeah, because it's $150 for the 1,000 and then $75 for the 500.
Got it.
It's on my brain.
Yeah. Exactly right.
So $225 times 12 months times 5 years. Inherited tenants. They were in the property. $13,500. That Matt has talked. I've twisted myself into origami to say that's what the tenant has been paying for big repairs, not for this stuff, right? So now here's the thing. Inherited tenants that have carpet in the unit that I have never touched. They have lived there for years. I own it for 5. That's a full replacement of carpet no matter what, whether the place has trash in it or not.
Probably.
They were smokers. Okay, so there's going to be paint. I'm going to replace the blinds and the screens because screens retain the scent of cigarettes more than anything except for carpet. The big scary thing that everybody saw when I did the video was all the trash that's there. So here's what the cost is to me for that. I have a guy, $400. He gets to keep whatever he finds, and then I pay the dump fees on top of that. So $400 to empty it out, probably $500 in dump fees if he makes 5 trips. It's going to be way less than that. It's probably going to be 3 or 4, but I'll go 500. So I'm like $1,000 for the clean out, right? Then I'm going to have to do the carpet anyway. When you do a tenant turnover, don't you paint anyway? So I have an extra step in the paint. I'm going to have a vinegar clean and a kills or the sealant.
The kill guard or whatever
to put it in there. I would clean out the HVAC system anyway. So of the $9,000, I'm going to spend $7 anyway on a tenant turnover that's been in there for 5 years, that was in it when I purchased it, right? All of that happens anyways. And because I'm disciplined and I still set aside for my total portfolio, it's a little over $5,000 a month going into an account, $225 from this thing. So like you, Matt, most of my stuff is handled through cash flow, right? $13,500 sitting in an account. The extra expense, because it's messy and there's a smell, is the clean out, which is less than $1,000, and the extra steps to the paint, which will probably add $500 to the paint bid to cover the. I'll hire a cleaning crew with vinegar, and then they got to do a kills paint before, like a primer, before they do the paint. So I'm out less than $2,000 that I wouldn't have had to spend anyway. So the nightmare tenant that all the tenant, because you saw the comments were like, oh, this is why I don't do rentals. This is what 100%. I saw. I've heard these stories. I'll never do this. And I'm like, I did not go into that property because I own a rental. And I did not see that nightmare because I own a rental. I went into that property because I have a YouTube channel.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've had tenant turnovers before where I went in with the YouTube channel and it was spotless. Like that's mostly, it's like Matt pointed out, this is the first time I got.
Yep.
If I was a landlord, I wouldn't care and I wouldn't know. I would get some videos and some pictures from a handyman saying, hey, here's all the stuff. You sure you want us to throw this away? There's like an elliptical. And we go, nope, you paid $400. Everything in there is yours. Clean it out. Demo the carpet, like I would anyways. So the added expense of this nightmare thing is less than $2,000. And 13.5 has been set aside because I actually do set aside the money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, which includes vacancy and tenant turnover.
Sure. So let's try to make this a lesson learned, because again, I think there's I don't know, I see it in real life where there's a disconnect from deal evaluation, aka yield calculation, to your earlier question, to operations, meaning running a business. So Matt, I'm going to go to you first to bring you back in, and I'm going to talk about early Matt, not Matt with 100+ units. I'm going to talk about Matt sub 20 units like Dion.
Yep.
So I'm going to assume back then that you were very much like Dion, where you had some kind of allocation every month to peel out and quote unquote set aside for capital or surprises. Is that reasonable?
Absolutely. Yep.
Now, I think this bears repeating. Was that a separate account?
Yeah.
Or was it just okay? So
tell us
about that structure.
It was separate because it wasn't separate per property. But it was separate as an account.
Right. So so the money comes in from rent, goes in one big bucket. Then you take some percentage and kick that over to some reserve bucket for a rainy day fund.
Yep. If it's, whatever, it's for the big stuff because, somebody was like, well, why don't you just make the tenant pay for the roof? Yeah. You want me to special assessment a tenant who's paying $1,800 a month, the $20,000 roof part that's their share? Like that's silly. That never doesn't work. Math doesn't work.
Well, in reality, I think to Dion's point here, the tenants are paying for the roof already in that capital allocation budget. It's just collected slowly month after month after month. And then at some point, again, just to tie the story back together, at some point, the portfolio just gets so big and that reserve bucket gets so big that you stop contributing and you just run the business on cash flow. Is that reasonable?
Yeah. I mean, our maintenance stuff comes in, between 2 and 3% of the number. As far as, I mean, we're really low because we know when we redo the units, we make that part of our make ready. So we basically shift on the balance sheet where the money's going to be. The money's going to be front loaded. When we were new, we couldn't front load unless we did a 203K or the, that type of a loan, right? Unless we did some sort of a rehab loan or construction loan, we couldn't front load it. But that's one of the things that I learned. That's one of the things that we teach in my course is this is how you front load it, because then you get higher rents, then you get better tenants that stay longer and treat the property better, is if you're putting them in a rehab unit versus a not rehabbed unit.
Right.
So that's one of the, and the big thing for us is for a long time, we acquired buildings that were vacant. We didn't acquire buildings that had tenants in them. Right. So that was the phase that we were in. So it was a matter of, it was on the balance sheet. Where did we make a part of it? We wanted to front end it as opposed to struggle bus all the way through, constantly trying to keep up and putting that money aside and basically crimping cash flow.
So Dan, we're going to go back to you just to make sure we have the story straight. So you have owned this property for 5 years. For 5 years, AKA 60 months, you have been setting aside $225 for whatever.
Correct.
Right? Your reserves or whatever you want to call it. And it is your thesis that $225, I guess what you're really telling me is that $225 is not yours. That's your argument.
Correct. So here's the breakdown on my cash flow. I'm still small enough to do this where it's not bragging and I'm not breaking anybody's brain. I've got about, there's a height joke in there somewhere, but it's a little over 35,000 a month in gross rents.
Okay.
9,000 a month. It was 8,000 a month, but now it's 9,000 a month in mortgages because insurance on almost everything went up so much. It's, a doubling in insurance is like $100 a month is what most of my policies were. And then I set aside 5,000 for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. It's in my mind, Alec. It's all in one account, but it's allocated. That's
no.
So hang on, I'm not done with my cash flow yet. So there's $21,000 left. Take out the 5, take out the 9. Okay. There's $21,000 left. My living expenses each month have never gone above $21,000. So my life, my ability to spend my money each month is not impacted by that $5,000 not being mine. It is the tenant's money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. And it looks like Zuber locked up.
So can I interject here, please?
Before I go, the idea that you need more than one account is that somebody doesn't have the mental discipline to say, that's not my money. It's just numbers in an account. I have the mental discipline to go, that's not money I can touch. That's money from my property.
Back to something that you always bang Matt and I with is you don't remember what it's like to not know something, right? Most people don't have that financial discipline and would just start to
mix and muddle.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to know that if you spend 5,000 a month, you don't want to spend more than 21,000 in a month. Like that's all it takes for me.
Maybe Dion.
Now we're bragging.
Even planning a cruise, I'm not spending 21 grand. I haven't done the full month cruise like Zuber does. I do the 10-day cruise that are like 10 grand.
The biggest challenge that I have with this is that it becomes your money when you're allocating. So when I take in money, that's my money for the business that I'm taking in.
That's the mistake I don't want the new investor to make.
But I think that's not a mistake. I think that's the right thing to do because you are a CEO when you own this property company.
Well, time out.
Own this asset.
Because again, I think I love this discussion, but and there's a nuance there. So basically, what I think we're now trying to needle on is that $5,000 in Dion's world, right? The $5,000.
Right, but here's the thing: that $5,000, though, all due respect, Dion has. He likes the type of units that he has, right? Yep. He's said it to me a number of times. I don't go through and go and rehab because I don't get any more extra money in this market. The number is what the number is. So if these guys were great tenants and for the last 5 years, they really took care of the place where they smoked outside and they didn't ruin the carpets and they didn't put holes in the walls and they didn't steal all of his lighting plates and they didn't, fill in the blanks, right? Like Dion, honestly, buddy, that's like a first for me. I've never seen that part before. I was like, why would you take the dollar plate? Like
literally unscrewed the dollar plate.
They unscrewed the plates and they took them. And I'm like, I mean, maybe they needed them for their new place. But the thing that I look at there is, again, we have units like that. We have budget units like that where our hope is when the tenant leaves, that they leave it in such good condition that, quite frankly, I'm doing touch-ups. And Dion, if they had really taken care of the unit for the last 5 years, you still have good carpet. The way that the bank the way that a judge amortizes carpet, because I've been to court before, the 7 years, correct. They give it 7 years is as far as like what amount of money they'll give you for replacement. But that being said, I have places that have really good carpet that was installed that's 20 years old that still looks fine and it still is very well kept that I wouldn't replace because it wasn't ruined. Yeah. It's not ruined. Go ahead.
Again, okay. So that's not a Washington State thing. Carpet here, I rip it out every time somebody moves because you mud track in everything that it lasts a couple of years here. So, and here's the proof of it. This is at my fourplex. And we can go back in my videos of November of 2023. Unit 3 moves out. This Air Force guy, spotless, leaves everything great. $7,000. I had to do all the carpet because these are inherited tenants. They had carpet. Sure. So if they were vacant when I bought it and the carpet looked like it did, I would have had to spend the money then. Right. So I'm going to spend $7,000 that I would have spent if this place was immaculate. It's the $2,000 I'm spending. But that's why it's not going to cost me $9,000. And I do set aside repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. And I track it with a spreadsheet. So yeah, it's in an account, but it's with a spreadsheet. I'm setting aside $60,000 a year. My worst year where I replaced roofs, had a septic system replaced and everything, was $36,000 in total expenses for my whole portfolio that year.
So I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. You are still tracking. There's some place.
Yeah, there's a spreadsheet. I've got a detailed spreadsheet.
Yeah. So December $5,000, January $5,000, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Because this is what I want the lesson to be learned is I do recommend for most people, it's a separate account. I don't know many people as disciplined as Dion. Even if it's at the same institution, you get the money coming in, whatever it was, 30 grand. You really do got to take that 5 and put it somewhere else. So you realize, and I think actually there's a middle ground. Matt's opinion as the judge here says it's Dion's money. Dion says it's the tenant's money. The judge is actually going to disagree with both of you. I think it's the property's money. That's what it is. That $5,000 is set aside for the property, right? Because it's the property that you're going to be doing maintenance on. And again, if you're a landlord, you may have several tenants go in and out of this unit, and you're still like, because again, I have units that turn over every year or 18 months. So it's the same deal. That money is set aside by tenants for the property.
But wouldn't you agree that if you have, so I'm more in touch, I'm going to put it out there. I'm more in touch with a person that has 3 units, because if I've got 3 units, cash is cash is cash is cash. I don't have to use that money on that specific building. If I have a roof go on building number 1 and I've got 4,000 in reserve on building number 3 and 3,000 reserve on building number 2 and 2,000 reserve on building number 1, that's cash that I'm using to maintain my portfolio. While it's nice to put it towards that building, if I'm a brand new investor, I don't have the luxury of 4,000, 3,000, and 2,000 sitting in accounts.
Okay, so maybe I used the wrong word, but again, we were talking about one instance. I think there is and I want people to see it this way. Yeah. I agree with Dion. That $5,000 is not his, but I also disagree. It's the tenants. It's the portfolio's kitty to make sure the portfolio stays healthy and clean and livable. Dion?
So you've clarified it perfectly. Thank you. It's the property's money. And here's why I'm concerned with the new investor taking it's my cash flow. Let's say you're brand new.
Yours. That I agree with.
Because you're brand new and you're looking, okay, I bought this place. The water heater was 6 years old. I should replace it because it's inside every 8 years. So that's got 2 years left. But that's my money. If I wait 10 years, I've kept my money 2 years. You start doing the slumlord tactics. Too many people would fall into what they call the slippery slope of delayed maintenance, or tenant asks for a ceiling fan. You're like, I'm not spending my money to put a ceiling fan in a place that was fine when you rented it. You agreed to it in the lease. And I'm like, please ask me to put in a new refrigerator. My tenant's money is going to buy I've got a brand new refrigerator in my rental that I don't have to think about for another few decades. So the reason I mentally allocate it and have it on the spreadsheet and I love it. It's the property's money, because the tenants put the roof on.
Right. They
paid it to the property. They paid for this LVP flooring that's going to go in. They paid this place probably getting a new fridge, because I don't think I'm going to make somebody clean the one that was left there. I'm going to it's the property's money, and I'm excited that the tenant put the money there for that property to be updated. And this was
you as the owner get the benefit of the improved unit.
The tenant didn't put the money there, you did. They paid it, but you put it there. You are still paying it. If you didn't have to make these repairs, you are keeping that money. A, or B, you are allocating it. When you're a small landlord, 1, 2, 3 units, it is a big bucket of money that when you need to do a roof, you raid all of those for the 3 buildings to pay for that roof. So my stance remains the same, is that is the company's money that's come in on those properties, that I am the arbitrator of where it gets spent because I am the CEO.
Correct.
And so where I say that money goes is where I say that money goes. And I don't think that puts you on a slippery slope to slumlord. I think what that does is it makes you an operator. It makes you an operator of the business that you want to grow over time so you can retire from your 9 to 5 and run and operate your business. Because at the end of the day, whether you use property management like Mike or handyman like you or have an employee like me, when you go across that gambit, all of them require the same thing: allocation of funds. And that's where we are in charge of our businesses, and we allocate the funds appropriately, regardless of which unit or building they came in on.
Well, okay, now my accounting brain is kicking in. So again, right, if you think about an income statement, or actually let's make it a balance sheet. right? So money comes in, it goes to a cash account on the balance sheet, right? Let's just pretend for a minute Dion doesn't have a spreadsheet. He actually has a separate account. What you would do there is you would take $5,000 out of the cash account and you would put it in some other kitty called capital and expenses. It would be a reserve account, right? And the importance of taking it out of the cash account and putting in reserves is it's not used for, mortgage, taxes, insurance, all of those other things. And, oh, by the way, to your point, as the operator or the allocator, I think you said, you can use that allocation anywhere you want.
Anywhere, of course.
But, hold on, not for your personal living expenses.
Right.
No,
but that's the important part where I think a lot of newbies get like rating the account, like you said. Some of them would be like, oh my God, I got to pay my car payment, or I had a personal expense here or something. And they see this reserve account, which is not yours. It's properties or portfolios.
It's your assets. It's your properties. I mean, it's your portfolios. It's your portfolio's funding.
Yeah, but if you take from that to do anything other than capital or expenses,
of course,
you say that as a
one addition to that.
Yeah,
because here's the way. So it's exactly how I've done it, except I've added one thing. The most important thing is that your money that is being set aside from rents for repairs, maintenance, and vacations is never used for your personal life, because if you have an expense, it can impact your ability to eat, right? Yes. So you don't ever want to do that. So I said reserves get set aside, and it can be used for anything in the portfolio, like this vacancy and these turnovers. And if the reserve is at an amount that I'm comfortable with, so when I had a small portfolio, it was 10 grand. When it was bigger, it was 30 grand. Now that I'm retired, it's 50. Everything above that, there's one more thing it can be used for. The next down payment.
Yes.
See, it can go into the portfolio for repairs, maintenance, or vacancy, or investing, but got to maintain that minimum reserve before I wouldn't dip into reserves for a down payment.
Absolutely.
Right. But the money for the down payment is coming from that.
So
money. So that's like a nuance to it.
Agreed. But that's the issue, right? Is that's what makes it the portfolio's money and the operator's money, because after you've hit that certain point, it's your next down payment. Mike doesn't need more than $50,000 in his account. I don't need more than $50,000. If I got hit with 3 roofs tomorrow, fine, done. And quite frankly, out of cash flow, I literally feel like an idiot keeping that much money sitting there doing absolutely nothing. But to that point, I'm the operator. I'm the owner. We stop contributing to that thing when it basically gets maxed out, because there's no point in doing any more. But it is a nice way for forced savings. But again, the crux of the matter is, as the operator, as the CEO and owner of the portfolio, I decide where allocation goes based on what I see fit. And when I was 3 units and I had to do a roof, I emptied all those accounts and I made sure that I could pay for the roof because that's what was needed. And then we would just start saving back in like we did normally. And as you grow to your size, you're to the point too, you have all those reserves sitting there, you're good. And then the only reason that Zoob's and mine outpace yours is because we have more inflow. So we have more responsibility for more units and more roofs. That means that then goes into that piece where it's like, okay, now I need that much more in the case of an emergency or disaster. But now all of that money that's in excess, all of that maintenance funding stuff, that's where the returns get so much better, is because you don't have to set aside for that maintenance and returns. That goes into another account as more profitability that you then spend on your next down payment. And that's why the wealth snowball works. Because you have that much more money coming in that you're not having to set aside.
All righty, folks, we're going to kick this to the jury. You, the person watching this, we're just going to leave you with one best practice. Please remember, taking your reserves from your yield calculation, make sure you're doing that in practice. I have seen too many new investors not actually set aside reserves, bad debt, all of that. Some of you think that extra $225 is yours to live on today. It is not. It needs to be set aside. So the jury is left with one question. Is the $225 a month for 5 years the tenant's money? Is it the property's money? Or is it Dion's money? Let us know in the comments below where you come down in this argument. We would appreciate that. Dion, where can they find you?
They can find me right here on YouTube, willing to argue with Matt every day of the week. Dion Talk Financial Freedom, where I do live streams every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific.
And the Lumberjack?
9 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. It's good to be right every once in a while. So I appreciate you making this one
I can't wait to see it.
easy on me, Dion.
The
And
jury,
the
let us
jury
know.
knows. The jury knows. Like, if the gloves don't fit, you must have quit. I mean, come on. Like, really.